My story is simple and banal, like all cheating husbands. When I was young, I was fond of music, playing in a rock band. I took my future wife from a colleague of mine in the band. I lost my head for love with her. We dated for almost a year. He tried to win her back, but to no avail. Did she love me? I think she did. We ended up getting married when I was in my 4th year at university. My wife was a year younger than me. We lived with my parents. She came from a disadvantaged family. Her father died early, and her mother didn't have time for her. A year later, my son was born. I had money problems. As a student, I received a scholarship, which was impossible to live on. Of course, my parents helped me in every way they could, and I also worked as a part-time watchman and played in clubs. In general, I made ends meet somehow. At the end of my studies, I was offered to join the Army as an officer. After consulting with my wife, I agreed. I was sent to serve in a big city as a commander of a reconnaissance platoon. I must say that I was a sporty fellow, a master of sports in biathlon. 2 months later, my wife and son arrived. We were given a room in the officers' dormitory. The life of a serviceman was full of business trips, and I was often absent at the exercises and field camps. My wife was left alone for a long time. She was in charge of our everyday life and the child. So we lived for 3 years. One fall, I came home from a brief business trip. 3 years. One fall, I came home from a brief business trip. And in the evening, I tried to caress my wife. She denied in every way, saying that she was tired with the baby, that she was starting her period. Nevertheless, I managed to undress her and saw numerous hickeys on her body. Not just one, but many and all over her body. There were hickeys on the inside of many and all over her body. There were hickeys on the inside of her thighs and even on her pubis. My wife started crying. She was hysterical. But I made her tell me what had happened. According to her, she had a mutual acquaintance, a fellow countryman. She invited him to the table, and then he suddenly moved with her to the bed, where he started molesting her, and eventually what happened. He molested her, and in a fit of passion those hickeys appeared. She claimed that there was no sex between them. That she came to her senses in time to kick him out. She told him not to touch her and not to embarrass her. That night I slept in the barracks. In the morning I found my friend, and after some brief physical violence I forced him to say everything. He apologized to me. I lived in the barracks for a week. Then my wife found me and persuaded me to come back for my son. I did not make a big fuss, except for beating up my acquaintance. Nobody in the military unit knew about what had happened. We moved on with her. When the term of my service began to come to an end, I wrote a report with a request to leave me in the armed forces. That is how I became a professional soldier. A year later, I went on a long business trip for almost 3 months, and when I came back, kind people told me that while I was there, my wife and her friends were having a good time with young officers. I guessed what the fun was, but I had no direct evidence of adultery. How many times I was going to break up with her, but every time I stayed for the sake of my son. This went on for about 8 years. A daughter was born. My wife was against it. She wanted to have an abortion, but I refused. At the beginning of the 90s, I started going on business trips to hot spots. On one of them, I was wounded badly. For 2 weeks, I was between life and death. Then I recovered for a long time, but the doctors warned me that I could stay an invalid for life. In total, I was discharged after half a year of wandering around in hospitals. All that time, my wife never came to see me. My father and older brother came to pick me up. When I asked where my wife was, my father said she had gone away with a man, and that she had left her children with my parents. Maybe I would have drank myself to death from such betrayal, but there were children and unbearable pain in my soul. I left the army. My health gradually improved, so much so that I passed my medical examination and joined the police. My parents helped me raise my children, so another 10 years passed. My son graduated from the police academy, and my daughter went to university. By that time, we were already living in our own 3-room apartment. Did I have other women? Yes, I did, because I was a human being, and I wanted a woman's caress and comfort at home. But nothing serious happened in my personal life. And then one January evening, the doorbell rang and my wife showed up on the doorstep. It was my wife, since we were not officially divorced. To be honest, I hardly recognized her. Before me stood a poorly dressed, thin, haggard woman with black circles under her eyes. And then, as usual, tears, words of forgiveness. I was a fool. I love only you and children, and so on. From her story, I realized that her roommate not only lived with her, but generously shared her body with his many relatives. In short, he made a sex slave out of her. They did not live long in the city, and he took her back to his homeland. During that time, she had 2 pregnancies, but she aborted them because her roommate did not want children. So she became psychologically dependent on him. They came to our city with her and his 2 brothers. While they were traveling on business, she ran away from them, got to my parents, and my kind-hearted mother gave her my address. We were alone in the apartment. The kids weren't home. About an hour later, the doorbell rang again, and when I opened it, I saw 3 men. One of them pushed me away, and they broke into the apartment. I realized it was my wife's roommate and his relatives. It turned out that one of the brothers had followed her. My wife tried to hide, but they quickly found her and tried to take her away. That's where my skills as a reconnaissance commander came in handy. Anyway, while the police arrived, who had been called by the neighbors, I took my soul away. A patrol arrived and got the uninvited guests all tangled up and brought them to the station. All except my wife. I confess, I felt sorry for her. I felt sorry for her because I found myself loving her all the time, in spite of everything. I had already held a serious position in the police, so I had no problem with uninvited guests. After the required 15 days in jail and after the appropriate preventive measures, they disappeared from the city forever. My wife stayed at my place. The children came. My son accepted my mother, but my daughter never forgave me for cheating on her. That's how we live. When I look at her, I remember only the good things that happened between us. After all, we did have it. Now my wife has health and mental problems and no pension. Twice a year, I take her to a sanatorium for health improvement. I am 56 years old now. I am a police colonel in the reserve. I get a good pension. I work in my first profession as an engineer in a gold mining company. I have more than enough money. I spend it with pleasure on my children and grandchildren, and of course, on my wife. That's the story. Honestly, I wrote it just to pour out my heart. Honestly, I wrote it just to pour out my heart. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.